Well, thank you very much. I mean, all things are put in perspective when you hear that talk. That was brilliant. Thank you. Firstly, an apology. I'm not Gareth Southgate. And I know that's what Gemma Greaves wanted. So see me as the suit behind the waistcoat. That's kind of... and I wish I could have claimed the credit for the waistcoat as a branding device as a former marketeer, but I can't. So my bravery story today is really the work that we've done to really rethink the whole way that the England team, particularly the senior men's team, are run and managed to make us more effective in tournaments. And it's a bravery story for a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, I've come out through the business world. I worked in consumer packaged goods, 15 years at Walker's Crisps, latterly at United Biscuits. I thought the packaged goods world was competitive. I thought that dealing with Tesco was tough. But nothing on this planet is more competitive than football. 210 countries of the world play it. Billions of people play it. It's more ubiquitous than any other sport. It is hugely, hugely competitive. So to do well in it, you've got to do well across a whole range of things that you're preparing for. Nothing in life incites passion quite the same way that football does. In England, at least, it's the national religion. Every decision that the Football Association makes is pored over. It normally segments a third in favour, a third don't care, and a third violently think you're an idiot. And it's also no respecter of previous track record. I'm meeting my former chairman, Greg Dyke, this afternoon for a cup of coffee. He came into the FA a few years ago with a great business track record, and he for one would tell you it doesn't really count for much when you start. You have a daily public bathing of at best scepticism and at worst, and probably more normally, criticism about every decision that you take. And I guess that is something which I'll build on about the resilience. And then finally, we had to change everything and almost every preconception about how we organise tournament football. Because England as a country is very successful in club football. There's nothing more powerful than the Premier League. Its popularity is huge. We just weren't translating it into the international teams and the tournaments. And here's sort of what happened. So the tournament doom cycle, as I'd call it, starts up with hyper expectations, not going so well in the tournament, dawning realisations, bitter recriminations, an inquest, always. Then you forget, you start over again. So it's kind of what I think English football, haven't won a World Cup in 52 years, was guilty of, was always looking for a messiah, some kind of inspirational manager, leader to take the team to the next level, as opposed to a reboot of the whole way that we organise things. And, to bring it to life in terms of my journey, I've been at the Football Association about a year, just under, and we'd done a lot of changes. We'd built something called St George's Park. We'd started to get the youth teams all sorted out and better developed in terms of their psychological preparation. We taking under 15s to under 21s all the way across the world to play foreign opposition. So that was good, but the senior men's team didn't report in to the St George's Park setup because it was built after the then manager Roy Hodgson had done the job, and he didn't believe in all of the things. So in the spirit of never waste a good crisis, that's a picture of Joe Hart after we've lost to Iceland in the first knockout stage. And it was an absolutely cathartic moment. And once again, you talk about the power of passion, the negative power of passion. There was an absolutely understandable outpouring of anger, frustration from England fans, and I was both working for the FA and an England fan about what had happened. I had an awful press conference. Roy Hodgson went into it for about 5 minutes and walked out, leaving me. And in a spirit of, here's a learning for you, in an attempt to be vaguely ironic and wry, to point out that a lot of things, conventional wisdom that we'd built upon doesn't work, I said, and by the way, I've been on the board of a football club. I used to be on the board of Leicester City. I've done a coaching badge, but I'm not a football expert. Saying I'm not a football expert to that baying pack of journalists was, whilst it was true, it wasn't actually helpful at the time. So you've got failure. We lost to a nation of 300,000 souls, and then you got this, which I think also struck a chord. This is a headline from an Irish newspaper saying basically you've got millionaire failures. Your footballers are so rich The Premier League gives them such riches, they don't really care. They can never ever really create the same spirit behind the team that our Welsh or Irish players can. Anyway, in the spirit of that, don't waste a crisis. So the story is kind of some of the things that we've done to change things. So really, this really is the challenge, which is how would you affect the disconnect between the players and the general public or fans, and importantly, between the players and the media, which had been a historic drag. And that's what I call and talk about the root and branch. Yeah, of course you want to get a great leader, but actually there were some fundamental things that just weren't working, hadn't worked for years, and we'd been a bit like this. Intractable issues, put in that too hard to solve box, let's try and find another manager, and we needed to do a lot more. So we wanted a New England. For those who know Billy Bragg, he talks about, I don't want to change the world. I'm not looking for a New England. I'm just looking for another girl. But however, we wanted to create a New England. And this is the big story you hear in football, and I guess we hear it in all of our organisations. Our organisation's different. When I first started at the FA, I had to present something called the FA Council, which is might have been the way it's formed, representative football 130 years ago, really isn't today. A lot of quite old people representing the county network largely. And I talked about the money we were going to put behind what we call St George's Park, our National Performance Centre, National Football Centre, because we'd done a deep study in how the Spanish have been successful and the Germans have been successful in developing, tournament experience for their young players that they can take through, and ultimately when they break through to the national team, when they go to a major tournament, they're not put out by living abroad, eating different food, etc., etc. And I was tapped on the shoulder after I'd done my presentation by someone who said, I think it's outrageous. I said, what? Our performance? He says, no, the fact that the CEO of the FA can cite Germany as a role model. I said, well, have you seen how many World Cups they've won? So you have that. We had to challenge. And so part of the, any culture change is difficult. I think it's particularly been difficult in football because it is, for some reason, a naturally conservative sport. And we had to change and challenge just about every precept of how we ran things. It started off with a degree of humility. Guess what? You can learn from other sports. And we were bringing in terms of our support staff, elite people from, say, Australian rules football, from rugby union, people that could bring in different ways of doing strength and conditioning and if you like, mental preparation. We got in Gareth Southgate, someone who'd been on the UK sports development programme. So he voluntarily was spending time learning from other people in different sports, learning from British hockey, how did they do so well in their Olympics and the like. And also, learning from, in terms of how other sports handled media. So the whole posture around England was incredibly defensive towards media. And we went out with Gareth to meet the NFL, go to Nike's inspirational headquarters a couple of years ago. And that really helped us think about resetting the whole way that we dealt with media, moving from defensive to something a bit more open to take the weight off the players. So challenging the conventional wisdom was really, really important. And I think if you don't get, or if you're not prepared to challenge those strongly held views in a process where you're trying to qualify for tournaments and where you might not have a great game, so therefore your whole system is judged on the result of one game, it is difficult. But that's what we needed to do. Every aspect of how we prepared was important. And I'll give you an example of one. Notice, you don't need to be a rocket scientist for this, but the ethnic makeup of our England team has changed a lot over the years. What would really appeal to someone whose perhaps nationality isn't, or parents weren't first nation, whose first nation wasn't necessarily English, but had perhaps come here as kids? How do you appeal to them? What does it mean to put the England shirt on? What does it mean to play for England? And we actually got help, once again, different sport, a guy called Owen Eastwood from rugby union, who'd done great work with the All Blacks. They've got a fantastic team spirit, which you've seen through tournament after tournament. And he did absolutely brilliant work about saying, okay, well, for today's generation, for the new generation, it's not just about beating the badge on your chest. What is it? How would you define an authentic sense of patriotism that would make them want to go and play. And that work was brilliant, and that sustained us through the qualification and particularly the tournament, because all of these players felt there was a reason to play. We had to change the positioning towards fans. We had seen England as, you picture on the right, that's Wayne Rooney, daubed in the cross of St. George. It's great, it's quite a creative way of expressing the flag, but it wasn't really the truth of what we were about. And if you go back to that point on, that headline from that Irish journal paper is really helpful. How can a bunch of spoilt millionaires ever play for England? Our England players want to play. The biggest prize they want to win is the World Cup. And they wanted to be able to be themselves and be authentic. And actually, the truth of the matter is, this was a hard-working, young squad of players that were really different. And we changed the idea from, if you like, the jingoistic type of patriotism to one of humility, saying hard work. And here's a video we put together for the team to try and capture that.
That's what we do. Every time we pull on the shirt, talent gives us the opportunity, but only work will give us the result. We work on our resilience, we work on our strength, we work on our teamwork. We put in as much work off the pitch as we do on it, because we have work to do. We work on doing things smarter, so we don't repeat the mistakes of the past.
How will English football recover from this?
This is a new England, full of fast, fearless, hungry young lions, playing the game we were born to play. Under 17 World Cup winners, under 19 European champions, under 20 World Cup winners. But we're nowhere near done. World Cup 2018 is coming. Let's get to work.
So that pretty much captured what we were trying to say, and we had to sort of then bring that out into a whole lot of different avenues. And if you think about it, one of the problems that England players will always say is they think the relationship with the press is really hard. English media is tough, right? Very inquiring, don't take any crap from anyone, but also very, very sceptical about anyone's intention and don't cut much slack. And we thought if these players were going to be authentic and really, really give their all on the pitch, express themselves. Gareth was very keen for a move from a defensive way of playing to an expressive way of playing. They had to be able to express themselves personally. And the great thing about the growth in social media is that allows you to disintermediate. The words are quite important, I think. Disintermediate the way that the players are projected. So if you're, for example, if the only way that you're seen is through the pen of a journalist saying this player XYZ is good, bad or ugly, that isn't good enough. And social media, the reach that our players have to their own people, all of them have massive following. And also recognising that with the biggest game in the country, the social media attraction of it is huge. We could start getting our own messages across. And we announced the squad for the World Cup in a very, very different way. It wasn't universally popular, although it was more popular than not. And rather than having the manager sit in front of a bunch of journalists like this asking a load of questions, we did a video of fans around the country in different towns from where the players were picked, saying good luck, get it on. And that was the squad announcement. We launched that on social media networks, and it did well. The traditionalists didn't like it, but what it did was, really set the tone in a different manner. And I think that's just once again, boldness is quite important. It wasn't traditional. You can imagine the raised eyebrows from the press pack, who are perhaps of a different generation, but it really showed them the positive media reaction we got. The positive social media interaction we got for that kind of told us it was the right thing to do. So lots of ways of doing things differently. Less is more, or more is less in a way. The more that you could expose the players to media, the better the treatment they got. And actually then with the press stealing something else from American football, the day the squad were then all invited to St. George's Park to start the preparation, rather than what normally happened, 2 victims were picked to go and sit in front of the press and ask questions. there were 23 booths. 23 booths, 23 players. We said to the press, knock yourselves out. Go and speak to anyone about anything. They weren't prepped. Our players weren't prepped. They weren't given training. Just talk about football. None of them are going to say, I hope Germany win. So what's the downside? I mean, there is downside. Interesting. And that was where Danny Rose talked about his mental health problems. This was a whole different way of doing things. And the process of doing that, we only did it not because we wanted to be nice to the press. We wanted the players to play with less fear. And that opening the press up to see these players as humans, to then have a darts competition ongoing through the tournament, getting more time together meant that there was less scepticism. And it worked extremely well. So we've changed a lot of things, the way that the media deal with us and our connection with the fans. But I just want to do a bit more of that. The truth, this is all back to marketing, the truth of the proposition. This is an example of creativity. So strength and conditioning, the biggest issue that a strength and conditioning person has is the fact that after the match day, players don't like to warm down properly or cool down, as it were. This was a picture we took in the team hotel about them. I think it was after, I forget which game it was, Tunisia probably, about how they did it. But using the truth of our product, here's how they prepare, here's what they do on social media channels, extremely valuable. Disintermediation again, our connection. Things like Lions Den, where we had a daily interview with players, also played out well. So doing things we've never done before, taking a few risks, and it playing off. Now I want to just divert, that's all, so a lot of rebooting done of the media, the press, the proposition with fans. This is a picture of the lineup of the England team during the penalty shootout with Colombia in the first knockout stage. And this in itself, we talk about fear and bravery. I'm saying we're being quite brave, trying some different things. The pressure players are under in a penalty shootout is massive. But we've done some things differently. I was told you can never prepare for penalties. Well, it turns out you can. And every player at every training session would be taking penalties. We analysed how other penalties were taken by different teams. We worked out that English players in penalty shootouts got to the penalty spot twice as quickly as a German player, i.e. they were panicking and they rushed it. Lots of preparation. But I draw your attention to it. This is just after Jordan Pickford has done that terrific save. So now we score, we win and we're through. And we win the first knockout game in about 20 years and the first penalty shootout since Euro 96. You can see the delight on the players' faces, but those of you who know who Eric Dyer is, he's not looking so happy. Now, Eric Dyer is the 5th penalty taker. Now, to make it worse for Eric Dyer, a little known fact, in the mayhem that happens after penalties are announced, he's told by Gareth, Eric, you're number 6, because Jamie Vardy's on the field. He's been brought on really with a view to penalties, and he's our best penalty taker. He's going to go number 2. So Eric, you're number 6. You're fine. Goes to Jamie Vardy, who basically says, look, I've got an injury, and he had been hobbling. I don't think I can kick properly. You have to go back to Eric Dyer and say, you know what? You know you're 6. You're now 5. Eric's thinking, was I not good enough to be 5? Anyway, we talk about pressure. We laugh about millionaire footballers. The quality of strike you need to score a penalty against great keepers is huge. Anyway, that was, I think, a really good example of, putting it under pressure. And we think about daring to win. Eric Dyer's penalty was probably the worst of the 5, but it was good enough. Using your head. We, in tournaments, we're supposed to be fearless, patriotic, never shirk a fight. We played our B team against Belgium in the final knockout stage. We did it for a couple of reasons. We wanted every one of the players who were on the tournament to play a game, because frankly then the spirit in the squad's far better. But you know what? We also knew that if we didn't win against Belgium, it wasn't a drama, because the route through to the semi-final was easier. We got some criticism for it. Were we gaming? Of course we're gaming. It's a tournament, and we want to win. Using your head, that was a picture sent to me by my cousin, which I felt pretty good about it. We couldn't say we wanted to lose it. We didn't. But I think, once again, being smart about tournaments are not just one-off games. They're a series of games. So a lot of learnings. Put it all together, we've got the women's in 2019. The women's have been some of our pioneering, if you like, guinea pigs for a lot of the work we've done on psychology and things. And we want to win the Women's World Cup in 2019, and the same kind of learnings we've had behind the men's team we're applying to the women. So let me just conclude before we go to questions. You know, we didn't win, in case you didn't know. We actually played 4 and lost 3. We lost to Belgium twice, as it happened. But there was a real paradigm shift. There was a paradigm shift in a whole bunch of ways. And I guarantee you, I can't guarantee we're going to win a Euros or World Cup. It's too competitive. I can guarantee you we're going to be more consistent. The whole setup, the whole tournament savvy is there. We were 15th ranked in the world before the World Cup. We're now ranked 5. We just beat Spain away. We have a platform to build on. We played with less fear, a lot less fear. And we reconnected with the whole generation. And how do we do it? I mean, this is where it kind of, there are lessons. It's applying the proven basics. I don't care whether you're a football team or a crisps company. You know, you need to have ambition and purpose, good people. We have great people. We've got a couple of colleagues in the audience today, Georgina Lewis, Russell James, who are big architects of what you're seeing here. You need to be open to outside influences. One of my lines when I was president of this great society was that all business failures are marketing failures, and I think that's been true of English football. Creativity. How do you take some of these lessons and make it sensible in the part you're in? And then resilience, because I've never been in a job where I personally get more criticism, and you know, I don't know anyone in the world that likes reading what an idiot they are in the press. So I'm still not a declared football expert, and I say to my colleagues, the day I do say I am, fire me. Anyway, last thought.
Official England World Cup squad announcement. I'm a hustler. I'm a hustler. Freeze on the battlefield.
Or winner in a World Cup like that, it's just incredible.
How did you even come up with this? Let's try a bit of positivity.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes for some questions, for a couple of questions. So I'll open up the floor immediately to the audience, so you've got a chance to ask Martin whatever you'd like. There's a mic going around, so just raise your hand and I'll have the mic come your way. Yeah, we just got one there and one, I believe, over here. So if you stand up and just give your name and your company's name as well.
Hi there, my name's Red. I'm from British Gas. I'm sure you've had this question a lot recently with Wayne Rooney, but I'm going to ask it anyways. There's been a lot of feedback on Wayne Rooney's final appearance. What do you make of all the feedback that you've got?
I hate it. Who likes feedback? Feedback's always a hidden word for criticism. Look, I mean, it's I mean, when have you had feedback that's good, honestly, when your boss sits you down? Look, I mean, I think the... Firstly, I could have spent 2 hours going through what we've done differently on England. It's kind of a bigger issue. We've never done this kind of thing before for a former player. We felt, and the players felt, that former stars, if you take the 66 stars, for example, haven't been treated that well. So why not try something different? How do I see the criticism? It's classic. This is a deeply... Two things. Football's conservative, and it's the national religion, and I guarantee you, any initiative that you, if you're in my shoes, that you thought was half good, a third of the population would think you're a total idiot. And that's kind of what we got. We did, it's not the reason we did it, but we did do a short opinion poll on how popular people thought it was. About 70% of people thought it was a sensible thing to do. That wouldn't have been reflected in the media. It's just trying something different. It's just trying something different. What could go wrong? What's the downside? Don't know. So I guess what the lesson is: be resilient, and we have been, and you know it'll be fine and be forgotten about tomorrow.
And I believe there was a question on this side of the room as well. Is there a hand?
I thought there was over there.
Okay, there's one right here.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, hi.
I'm Kristen from Brilliant Noise. You've mentioned with the women's team that it's been an opportunity to do lots of innovation. Are you bringing the marketing innovation to the women's team for 2019?
Yeah, I mean, so the question, in case you didn't hear it, are we bring the kind of marketing innovation to the women's team that we did with the men's. Absolutely. It's interesting. We did really well in the last World Cup for the women's. We went, I think, 9th in the world and finished 3rd. And that was the first women's team we'd ever sent with a full complement of, you know, really professional strength and conditioning backup and psychological backup. We lost our first game to France, finished up 3rd. The learning we've had, I think, from the Senior Men's World Cup is it's a bit different. The women don't play with the weight of expectation on their shoulders that the men have, because the game is not as salient yet in the eyes of the population. The opportunity, I think, so the point for the Women's World Cup, it's all about opportunity. We want to create the women, get some of those names to be really household names. That inspires a whole new set of people to play. So every tournament we've done well in with the women's game, you just see this real spike following in terms of participation. And after the Women's World Cup, we target ourselves to double the size of the women's game in England by 2020. We're actually on track to do it. And so everything we can do around the 19 World Cup in France will be, you know, hopefully help us towards that goal.
Martin, we'll have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for your talk and for taking questions. Thank you. Thanks so much.